Hello everyone, hope you are doing okay. We are outside in my backyard. Why? Because it's Sunday and it's super nice out and I plan on enjoying all the sun that I could get before winter happens. So apologies if you hear miscellaneous background noise. There's an airplane up top, apparently, and then there's also someone doing work in the lot behind me. But change of venue, I've got a basil plant and some other plants, so thought you might like to see what my backyard looks like. This week we are starting left-hand technique, which for violin and viola means that we are going to be using our hands, our left hand. So make sure first, before you start, that you are holding the right hand up. I usually like to check to make sure that my hand makes an L shape. Hopefully you can see that. The L that's facing you and makes an L is actually your left hand. If not, the other one's your right. So hopefully you can figure out between the two. But yes, you want to make sure your left hand is the one we're using. Now, something to note. In violin and viola specifically, the first three fingers we like to use are our pointer finger, our middle finger, and our third finger, our ring finger. We eventually will add fourth finger, but that's not until much further down. So for now, when I'm referring to finger numbers, I'm referring to the number of which finger we're on. So your pointer finger is what would be 1, 2 is your middle finger, and 3 is your ring finger. Now something that's also really important is if you are putting fingers down and you're putting down 2 or 3, you want to make sure that you also put down 1 and 2, like if you're using 3, make sure you put down all 3 because you want to get used to that hand shape. That hand shape becomes really fundamental when we start to do other technique things, and you want to get used to kind of having this, what I call like hover hand. So when I'm putting down my other fingers, I'm not taking them off to reach to the other places because that makes it super awkward and it's not as stable, and you want to have as much stability as possible. So yes. Now, if you have tapes, which I believe you guys do, ooh, another airplane, if you have tapes, your first finger would go on that first tape. The first tape, if you don't have tapes, is usually about, I'd say, an inch or so, or a 3/4 of an inch away from the top of your fingerboard. Notice how mine doesn't have tapes, that's because I'm fancy. But I know for frame of reference that my first finger goes right along here, or on that first tape if I have tapes. Now, if I'm putting down 2, I have about that much space between my 2 fingers. It's about the same distance that you would have from the end to that 1, about the same. We will, as we get further along, talk about the alterations for the second finger, but for now, we're getting used to that space between. And you will notice that your tape, if you have tapes, has a space between, and they're not touching. You don't want your fingers to touch for this initial setup. And last but not least, your third finger becomes neighbors with your second finger. 2 and 3 do touch when we're in this position because they are neighbors in this case. Now, something to note with my thumb. Notice how when I'm holding, let's see if I can show you. I'll go this way. Notice how I'm holding that my thumb is just resting on the side of the neck of the instrument. It shouldn't be down here, and it shouldn't be all the way around. It should kind of be like if you are familiar with like riding a bicycle and you have your kickstand so that your bike stays up, that thumb is really your kickstand. It creates the foundation spot for your left hand to take shape. And then last but not least, the super most important part is we want to make sure that we continue to have this nice pocket of space between our fatty, fleshy part of the palm of our hand and the neck of the instrument. I often see this position with beginners. The way I like to think of it is if you were to go up to someone and squeeze their neck, they can't breathe. The same thing applies to your instrument. Squeezing the neck like this cuts off the tone quality and makes it sound not as good. So we want to get used to having that wrist nice and back, not collapsed. So when I was checking that posture assignment earlier during week 3, I was also checking to make sure that we have that nice hand shape and that nice open palm. Now you don't want to hyperextend it so it's all the way back here, but it should be nice, and aligned. This should feel pretty okay. And then as far as the actual shape of the hand, I like to think of it as a cup. Or like if I were to pick up a cup and I were to drink, I have a nice C shape in my hand, nice and relaxed as if I were holding something. And you should have lots of finger mobility. So that's left hand shape. If you need any help with that, please let me know. Good luck.